Every night, 7 billion people across this planet do something absolutely terrifying, and they don't even realize it. They close their eyes, surrender control of their minds, and allow their consciousness to leave. But where does it go? For decades, we've been told dreams are just random neural firing, memory consolidation, your brain's screensaver. But what if that's not the whole truth? What if there's something far more disturbing happening when you slip into sleep? Here's what they don't tell you about REM sleep. Your brain becomes more active than when you're awake, more active. While your body lies there, paralyzed, defenseless, your consciousness is operating at levels that shouldn't be possible. The visual cortex fires without any light entering your eyes. You see things, places that don't exist, people who aren't there, or do they? In 1952, a woman named Helen Keller, deaf and blind from birth, described detailed visual dreams with perfect clarity. She saw colors she'd never experienced, faces she'd never seen, landscapes impossible for someone who lived in perpetual darkness. How do you dream in color when you've never seen color? How do you visualize faces when you've never seen a face? But here's where it gets truly unsettling. Every indigenous culture on Earth, separated by oceans and centuries, all develop the same belief independently. During dreams, your soul leaves your body and travels to other realms. The Aboriginals call it walkabout dreaming. The ancient Egyptians believed the Bea, your soul, would journey through the afterlife each night, returning with knowledge from the dead. The Inuits speak of dream souls that can visit the living and the deceased. Native American tribes describe dream time as a parallel reality where spirits communicate and prophecies unfold. Coincidence? Or did they know something we've forgotten? Dr. Robert Monroe, a respectable businessman, began documenting his out-of-body experiences in the 1960s. He could describe in perfect detail conversations happening in rooms he'd never physically entered, events occurring hundreds of miles away, information he couldn't possibly have known. He founded the Monroe Institute, where thousands of people have since reported similar experiences. The military took notice. For over 2 decades, the CIA ran a classified program called Stargate, using remote viewing and dream consciousness to gather intelligence. They spent over $20 million studying psychic phenomena, much of it focused on consciousness that could operate outside the physical body. If it was just random brain activity, why would the government spend millions studying it? Why would they classify the results for decades? The documents that were eventually released show successful remote viewing sessions, accurate intelligence gathering through non-physical means, and consistent reports of consciousness operating independently from the brain. Project Looking Glass, another classified program, allegedly involved using consciousness to view potential future timelines. These weren't science fiction experiments. These were serious military operations with measurable results. But here's the part that should terrify you. If consciousness can leave the body during dreams, what else is out there? What other forms of consciousness might you encounter when your soul goes wandering? Sleep paralysis victims across the world report the same entities: shadow figures, old hags, demons pressing down on their chests. These aren't hallucinations. They're documented, consistent encounters with something that exists in the space between awake and asleep, the space where your consciousness travels. Researchers have found that people experiencing sleep paralysis often describe identical beings, identical scenarios, identical feelings of dread, despite having no contact with each other. Ancient texts speak of dream walkers, entities that can enter your dreams, plant thoughts, steal memories, or worse, follow you back. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes the bardo, intermediate states of existence between life and death that consciousness travels through. But it warns of hungry ghosts, malevolent spirits that feed on fear and confusion, waiting to trap wandering souls. What if every nightmare isn't random fear, but an actual encounter with something that feeds on terror? What if recurring dreams aren't your subconscious processing trauma, but you literally returning to the same place night after night, where something is waiting for you? Consider this. Why do children across all cultures naturally fear the dark? Fear monsters under the bed. Fear things that go bump in the night. They have no cultural programming for these fears. No evolutionary reason to fear imaginary creatures, unless they're not imaginary. Tibetan monks practice dream yoga, the art of maintaining consciousness while dreaming. They speak of navigating different realms, meeting beings of various forms, and learning that physical death is just another transition of consciousness. But they also warn that not all realms are safe. Not all entities are benevolent. And once you learn to travel consciously in dreams, you might not be the only one who notices. The monks describe layers of reality like onion skins, each accessible through different states of consciousness. They speak of the clear light of sleep, where consciousness exists in its purest form, unencumbered by physical limitations. But they also describe the lower astral realms, populated by entities that have never been human, that exist solely to feed on the energy of wandering souls. Modern quantum physics is beginning to catch up with ancient wisdom. The observer effect shows that consciousness affects reality at the quantum level. If consciousness can influence matter, if it exists independently of the brain, then during sleep, when the brain's filtering mechanisms shut down, consciousness might access information and dimensions normally hidden from us. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake's research on morphic fields suggests that consciousness might tap into collective information fields during altered states. Dreams might be windows into what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious. But what if it's more than symbolic? What if it's literal? There are documented cases of people dreaming about deceased relatives who provided information the dreamer couldn't have known. Phone numbers, hidden objects, family secrets that were later verified. If dreams are just neural noise, how do you explain veridical information from the dead? Some researchers believe that during REM sleep, consciousness operates on quantum frequencies, accessing non-local information through quantum entanglement. This might explain precognitive dreams, shared dreaming experiences, and encounters with consciousness that exists outside physical bodies. But here's what keeps researchers awake at night. If consciousness can travel during dreams, if it can access other dimensions and encounter other entities, what are the rules? What protections exist? And what happens when something from those other realms decides to follow consciousness back to the physical world? There are reports of people waking up with physical marks that correspond to dream injuries, scratches, bruises, burns that appear overnight with no physical explanation. Medical science calls it psychosomatic manifestation. But what if it's evidence that dream encounters can have very real consequences? The ancient Gnostics wrote about archons, parasitic entities that exist in dream realms and feed on human consciousness. They described techniques for recognizing these beings and protecting oneself during astral travel. Modern UFO researchers note similarities between alien abduction experiences and astral projection encounters, suggesting that what we interpret as extraterrestrial contact might actually be interdimensional consciousness interaction. Tonight, when you close your eyes and feel yourself drifting away, remember this. Your consciousness isn't shutting down. It's going somewhere. The question isn't whether dreams are real. The question is, what happens when something from your dreams decides to follow you home? What happens when you wake up, but something else wakes up with you? Sweet dreams.